In the summer of 1944, the skies over Europe were filled with the sounds of war, roaring engines, the thrum of gunfire, and the distant rumble of explosions. Among the many men flying their missions in bombers was Corporal Jack Thompson, a bombardier in the 15th Air Force. He had been through hell and back, but nothing could prepare him for what he would witness on that fateful day when they crossed paths with the legendary Tuskegee Airmen. Jack's bomber, the Gilded Eagle, was on a routine mission to escort a fleet of B-17 bombers toward a heavily defended target in Germany. As they flew, deeper into enemy territory, apprehension hung thick in the air. The crew had heard stories of the Tuskegee pilots, brave men who faced prejudice at home yet soared valiantly above enemy lines. Jack had seen their insignia, a crimson tail marking their aircraft, but he had never flown alongside them. Today would change everything. When the Tuskegee pilots appeared on the horizon, flying their P-51 Mustangs with an elegance that defied the chaos of war, Jack felt a surge of hope. Their vibrant red tails cut through the clouds like a beacon, and for a moment, the weight of fear lifted. He watched, in awe as the lead pilot, Lieutenant Charles Chief Anderson, signaled the formation, his confidence radiating through the radio chatter. Jack's heart raced. These pilots were not just fighting for their country, but also for their dignity. As they approached the target, enemy flak erupted around them, bursting like angry fireworks. The bombers shook under the assault, and Jack's hands gripped his controls tightly. But the Tuskegee pilots were unfazed. They danced through the flak, their movements sharp and calculated. Jack observed as they executed a daring maneuver, diving into the fray to shield the bombers from enemy fighters. With each dogfight, they showcased a mastery that contradicted the disbelief of many back home. The day turned dark as enemy fighters swarmed like vultures. Jack could feel the tension in the air, but the Tuskegee pilots held their ground, forming a protective barrier around the bombers. Jack had never seen anything like it. Their resolute bravery was palpable, and the way they worked together was nothing short of extraordinary. He watched as one pilot, Lieutenant Benjamin Davis, engaged in a fierce battle, his Mustang weaving through enemy fire with a grace that left Jack breathless. The mission concluded with a triumphant return. The bombers were intact, and the enemy fighters had retreated. The Tuskegee pilots had pulled off what many believed was impossible. They had protected the bombers without losing a single aircraft. As the Gilded Eagle landed back at base, Jack's heart swelled with pride. He knew that this day would remain etched in his memory forever. Years. As Jack sat in his living room, flipping through a photo album filled with fading memories, he paused at a picture of the red-tailed Mustangs. The sight transported him back to that day, igniting a fire within him. He remembered the courage of the Tuskegee pilots, the way they defied expectations and fought for their place in history. Jack realized that their legacy was not just about flying, it was a testament to resilience and hope in the face of adversity. If you want to discover more stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. As the years went on, Jack often spoke about that mission, sharing the tale of the Tuskegee Airmen with anyone who would listen. Their bravery inspired a new generation, and Jack made it his mission to ensure that the contributions of these remarkable pilots were never forgotten. He became an advocate for their story, urging schools and communities to recognize the impact they had not just on the war, but on the very fabric of American society. Jack's journey led him to meet many of the 8 surviving Tuskegee pilots. Each encounter was a reminder of the struggles they faced, the battles they won, and the barriers they broke. The pilots were humble, often attributing their success to teamwork and determination. But Jack knew better. He had seen their resolve firsthand. They were not just heroes. They were trailblazers who changed perceptions and paved the way for future generations. As he shared their stories, Jack felt a sense of purpose. He understood that his role was to bridge the past and the present, ensuring that the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen lived on. Their courage had shattered stereotypes and opened doors for countless individuals. In every heart they inspired, in every life they touched, the spirit of the Tuskegee pilots soared on, a testament to what could be achieved when one dared to defy the odds. As Jack delved deeper into the history of the Tuskegee Airmen, he uncovered stories that fueled his passion even further. One particular tale stood out to him, an account of a mission where the Tuskegee pilots faced overwhelming odds, yet emerged victorious against all expectations. This mission involved escorting a squadron of bombers on a perilous raid, deep into enemy territory. Jack could almost hear the roar of engines and feel the tension in the air as he read the details of that day. On that fateful day, the sky was painted with the colors of war. Clouds of smoke billowed on the horizon as enemy fighters attempted to intercept the bombers. The Tuskegee pilots, flying their P-51 Mustangs with their signature red tails, were determined to protect their comrades. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they executed their tactical maneuvers with precision, showcasing not only their skill, but also their unwavering spirit. Jack remembered the pride in their eyes as they recounted how they had turned the tide of that mission, preventing significant losses and ensuring the bombers returned safely. Inspired by these stories, Jack began organizing community events aimed at honoring the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. He reached out to local schools, veterans organizations, and community centers, sharing not only the tales of their bravery, but also the broader implications of their achievements. He emphasized how these men had not only fought for their country, but had also fought against the very prejudices that sought to undermine their worth as individuals. One day, during a presentation at a local high school, Jack met a young student named Maya. She was fascinated by the stories and asked questions that revealed her own aspirations of becoming a pilot. Jack saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, reminiscent of the determination he had witnessed in the Tuskegee pilots. They spoke for hours, and Jack learned that Maya had faced her own set of challenges. She was often told that a career in aviation was unattainable for someone like her. But as Jack shared the triumphs of the Tuskegee Airmen, he could see her spirit lift. That evening, Jack had an epiphany. He decided to create a mentorship program that connected young, aspiring pilots from diverse backgrounds with veterans of the Tuskegee Airmen. He envisioned a space where history met aspiration, allowing the next generation to learn from the experiences of those who had paved the way before them. With the help of local organizations and the surviving pilots, Jack launched the program. It became a sanctuary for students like Maya, where they could find encouragement and guidance, fostering a sense of belonging in a field that often felt exclusive. The stories of resilience and achievement that Jack shared ignited a fire in these young minds, inspiring them to break barriers just like the Tuskegee pilots had done decades earlier. As the years passed, the program flourished, yielding not just future pilots but leaders who understood the significance of diversity and perseverance in all aspects of life. Jack watched proudly as Maya and her peers took to the skies, embodying the spirit of the Tuskegee Airmen. They carried with them the legacy of those brave pilots, a legacy that taught them that courage knows no color and that dreams, when chased with determination, can turn into reality. In reflecting on his journey, Jack realized that the Tuskegee pilots had not only changed the course of the war, but had also transformed the narrative of what it meant to be a hero. Their stories were no longer confined to the pages of history. They were alive in the hearts of a new generation, ready to soar to new heights. And so, in every flight taken by these young aviators, Jack felt the presence of the red tails guiding them, a reminder that the fight for equality and recognition was far from over. But with each passing day, they were one step closer to making the skies a place where everyone could belong. As Jack continued to mentor Maya and her fellow aspiring pilots, he often reflected on the profound impact the Tuskegee pilots had on his life and the lives of countless others. He remembered vividly his own experiences as a bomber crewman during the war, when he first witnessed the extraordinary capabilities of the 332nd Fighter Group. Their reputation as the Red Tail Angels was not just a title. It was a testament to their unwavering dedication and unparalleled skill in the skies. One particular mission stood out in his memory. It was a chilly day in early 1945 when his bomber, the Liberty Bell, was scheduled to fly a critical mission over enemy territory. The stakes were high, and the tension in the crew was palpable. As they prepared for takeoff, Jack's thoughts drifted back to the first time he had crossed paths with the Tuskegee pilots. He had watched them from a distance, marveling at their precision and teamwork as they executed maneuvers that seemed almost choreographed. As the Liberty Bell flew deeper into enemy airspace, the crew remained focused, but Jack couldn't shake the anxiety of previous missions where they had encountered fierce resistance. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, and the familiar voice of a Tuskegee pilot came through. "This is Red Tail 1. We have your 6. Stay tight, and we'll get you home." Jack's heart surged with gratitude. The presence of the Tuskegee pilots was a beacon of hope amidst the uncertainty of combat. He had seen them in action before, expertly weaving through enemy fire to protect bombers like his own. Their strategy was clear: prioritize the safety of the bombers while engaging the enemy with precision. That day, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that they weren't just fighting for victory, but for the very dignity of their existence. As the mission unfolded, the Tuskegee pilots executed their role flawlessly. They danced around enemy aircraft, turning the tide of battle. Jack watched in awe as one of the Red Tails performed a daring maneuver to intercept a German fighter closing in on their flank. It was a display of skill and courage that he would never forget. The enemy aircraft exploded in a plume of smoke, a testament to the unmatched tenacity of the Tuskegee pilots. After the successful mission, as the crew returned to base, Jack felt a profound sense of camaraderie with the Tuskegee pilots. He understood that their fight went beyond the battlefield. It was about proving that they belonged, that they were equal. Their triumphs resonated deeply, challenging the stereotypes that had long plagued African-American servicemen. Years, as Jack stood before his students, he shared the story of that mission, emphasizing how the Tuskegee pilots had not only protected their lives, but had also changed perceptions. He spoke of their legacy, not just as military heroes, but as pioneers who paved the way for future generations. The room was filled with rapt attention, each student absorbing the lessons of courage and resilience. Maya, inspired by Jack's tales, began to see herself in the narrative. She realized that the struggles faced by the Tuskegee pilots mirrored her own journey. Although she faced her own set of challenges as a young woman in aviation, Jack's mentorship instilled in her a belief that she too could overcome obstacles and break barriers. As the program blossomed and the students prepared for their first solo flights, Jack knew that the spirit of the Tuskegee Airmen lived on in them. Each takeoff was a tribute to those who had fought for their right to soar, a reminder that the skies were meant for everyone. Jack smiled, knowing that he was nurturing the next generation of aviation leaders, students who would carry forward the legacy of the Red Tails, ensuring that their story would never be forgotten. As the school year progressed, Jack found himself increasingly drawn into the lives of his students. One Friday afternoon, as they gathered for a discussion on the historical significance of the Tuskegee Airmen, Maya raised her hand, her brow furrowed with curiosity. "Mr. Thompson, why do you think the Tuskegee pilots faced so much skepticism when they were clearly capable?" Jack paused, reflecting on the broader implications of her question. "That skepticism was rooted in deep-seated racial prejudices," he began. "But what's crucial to remember is that they didn't let that stop them. They turned adversity into motivation." The room fell silent, each student absorbing the weight of his words. The following week, Jack decided to take a bold step. He arranged for a guest speaker, an elderly veteran who had served alongside the Tuskegee pilots. The anticipation in the classroom was palpable. When Mr. Johnson arrived, his presence commanded immediate respect. As he began to recount his experiences, the students leaned in, captivated by his stories of bravery and resilience. Flying with the Tuskegee pilots was an honor, Mr. Johnson said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. They faced challenges we couldn't even imagine, yet they flew with a pride that inspired everyone around them. He shared anecdotes of missions, emphasizing the crucial role the Red Tails played in escorting bombers through enemy fire, and how their skill earned them the admiration of even the most skeptical of their peers. Maya listened intently, her dreams of becoming a pilot reigniting with each word. After the session, she approached Mr. Johnson, her heart racing. "What was it like flying alongside them? Did you ever doubt their abilities?" Mr. Johnson smiled warmly. "I never doubted them, not for a second. They had to fight not just the enemy in the sky, but the battles of prejudice on the ground. Their courage taught me a lesson I carry to this day. You must believe in yourself, even when others don't." Inspired, Maya decided to take her learning a step further. She organized a project to honor the Tuskegee Airmen, inviting her classmates to participate. They researched the pilot's history, created informative presentations, and even planned a small exhibition showcasing their contributions. Jax was impressed by Maya's initiative and offered to help her secure materials and resources for the project. As the exhibition day approached, the classroom buzzed with excitement. Students worked late into the night, driven by a shared purpose. Jack watched as they collaborated, their respect for the Tuskegee Airmen transforming into a tangible tribute. On the day of the exhibition, the school community gathered, and Maya took center stage, her voice steady. Today we honor the Tuskegee Airmen, not just as pilots, but as symbols of perseverance and equality, she declared, her eyes shining with passion. Their legacy is a reminder that we can break barriers and redefine the skies. The audience erupted in applause, a wave of appreciation washing over everyone present. Jack felt a swell of pride as he witnessed his students not only learning history, but actively engaging with it. They were embodying the spirit of the Red Tails, proving that courage and resilience could inspire change in any generation. In the following months, the lessons learned in that classroom rippled through the school, igniting discussions about diversity and inclusion in aviation. Jack's mentorship forged connections that extended beyond the classroom, encouraging students like Maya to pursue their dreams fearlessly. As Jack stood before his students one last time before summer break, he reflected on the journey they had all taken together. The Tuskegee pilots taught us that the fight for equality is ongoing, he said, his voice filled with hope. But each of you has the power to make a difference, to soar above the clouds of doubt. With that, he encouraged them to carry forward the legacy of the Red Tails, ensuring that their story would never to obscurity. Each student, inspired and empowered, left that classroom ready to take on the world, armed with the knowledge that they were the next generation of pioneers, destined to shape the future. As summer break approached, Jack realized that the lessons of the Tuskegee Airmen had taken root deeply within his students. He decided to organize a field trip to a local aviation museum, where they could see firsthand the aircraft that had once soared through the skies during World War II. This trip would not only deepen their understanding of aviation history, but also provide a tangible connection to the legacy of the Red Tails. On the day of the trip, excitement buzzed through the air as the students boarded the bus, their chatter filled with anticipation. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a knowledgeable guide who shared stories of the aircraft and the heroic pilots who flew them. Jack watched as Maya and her classmates listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder. The guide pointed out a restored P-51 Mustang, the very aircraft that had become synonymous with the Tuskegee Airmen's reputation for excellence in combat. As they stood in front of the Mustang, Jack took the opportunity to share a personal story. "I once met a bomber crewman who flew missions during the war," he began, capturing the students' attention. "He told me about the day they first encountered the Tuskegee pilots. His crew had been struggling under heavy enemy fire and they were losing hope." The students leaned in closer, intrigued by the unfolding narrative. Jack continued, "But then, out of the clouds, came a group of red tails, their distinctive red tails shimmering in the sunlight. They dove into action, skillfully protecting the bombers and turning the tide of the battle. That crewman told me that he'd never forget the sight of those pilots, how their courage inspired not just him, but everyone on that mission." The students were silent, absorbing the weight of the story. It was more than just history. It was a moment of valor that transcended time, linking past and present. Jack emphasized, the Tuskegee Airmen didn't just fight for their country. They fought for respect, for the right to be seen as equals. Their bravery changed perceptions and opened doors for future generations. After the tour, Maya approached Jack with newfound determination. "Mr. Thompson, I want to learn how to fly," she declared, her voice steady. Jack smiled, knowing the impact of the Tuskegee legacy was alive and well in her aspirations. "That's fantastic, Maya. There are programs available for young aviators. I'll help you find one." Inspired by Maya's ambition, other students began to express their dreams too, some wanting to become engineers, others aspiring to be pilots or aerospace scientists. Jack realized that the seeds of change had been sown, and now it was his duty to nurture them. As the school year came to a close, Jack organized a presentation night where students could showcase their projects related to the Tuskegee Airmen. Each project was a testament to the lessons they had learned, highlighting themes of courage, resilience, and the ongoing fight for equality. Parents and community members attended, their faces lit with pride as they listened to the students passionately share their insights. That evening, as Jack looked around the room filled with laughter and celebration, he felt a sense of fulfillment. The Tuskegee Airmen had not only taught a lesson in history, they had ignited a fire of ambition and purpose within these young minds. The legacy of the Red Tails would not just be remembered, it would be carried forward, with each student ready to face their challenges with the same bravery that defined the pilots of Tuskegee. In the months that followed, Jack continued to mentor Maya and her classmates, guiding them through scholarship applications and flight programs. The air was thick with possibility, as they all understood that they were not just learning about the past, but were actively shaping a future where dreams could take flight, much like the Red Tails had done so many years ago. As the summer unfolded, Jack's mentorship took on a new dimension. Inspired by the rich history of the Tuskegee Airmen, he decided to organize a series of workshops that would not only focus on aviation, but also delve into the broader themes of social justice and equality that the airmen had fought for. He reached out to local veterans, inviting them to share their experiences with the students. One of the first guests was a retired Air Force colonel who had flown alongside the Tuskegee pilots during the war. He spoke about his own initial skepticism and how witnessing the skill and bravery of the Red Tails transformed his perspective. "I remember the first time I saw them in action," he recounted, his eyes glistening with nostalgia. "They were outnumbered and flying those P-40s, but they fought valiantly. It was a lesson in courage that I carry with me to this day." The students hung on his every word, captivated not only by the tales of aerial combat, but also by the underlying message of perseverance. Maya and her classmates began to understand that the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was not just about flying, it was about breaking barriers and redefining what was possible. As the workshops progressed, Jack introduced a project that would culminate in a community event, a reenactment of a Tuskegee mission. Students would take on various roles: pilots, crew members, and even the civilians who supported the war effort on the ground. They researched the missions, learned about the challenges faced by the 332nd Fighter Group, and understood the impact of their work on the morale of the bombers they escorted. Maya, taking the role of a pilot, immersed herself in studying flight maneuvers and the technical details of the aircraft. She spent late nights practicing her lines and making sure she could accurately portray the courage of her historical counterpart. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and soon her friends were equally invested, forming a tight-knit team determined to honor the legacy of the Red Tails. As the event day approached, the community buzzed with anticipation. Flyers were distributed, and local news outlets picked up the story, highlighting the students' efforts to honor the Tuskegee Airmen. On the day of the reenactment, the school's auditorium was filled to capacity. Families, veterans, and community members gathered to witness the students' tribute. The lights dimmed, and the audience fell silent as the performance began. Maya, dressed in a flight suit, delivered her lines with conviction, embodying the spirit of the Tuskegee pilots. The reenactment unfolded with scenes of camaraderie among the pilots, the tension of combat, and the moments of bravery that defined their missions. As the script progressed, it became clear that the struggles of the past resonated deeply with the present. Maya spoke about the importance of equality, echoing the sentiments of the Tuskegee Airmen as she addressed the audience. "We stand on the shoulders of those who fought for our right to dream," she declared, her voice steady. "We owe it to them to keep pushing forward, to break down the barriers that still exist in our world today." The audience erupted in applause, moved by the performance and the powerful message. Jack watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen had indeed taken root in this new generation, inspiring them not only to pursue their dreams, but to advocate for justice and equality. In the weeks that followed, the momentum continued. Inspired by the event, students began to engage in community outreach, organizing discussions and workshops on diversity and inclusion. They connected with local organizations dedicated to promoting equity in education and employment, turning their passion into action. Jack realized that the impact of the Tuskegee Airmen was more than just a historical lesson. It was a catalyst for change. instilling a sense of purpose in the hearts of young individuals ready to challenge the status quo. As he watched Maya and her classmates thrive, he knew that the legacy of the Red Tails would not only be remembered, but would continue to inspire generations to come. As the weeks turned into months, Jack became increasingly involved in the students' community initiatives. Inspired by Maya's conviction, he joined a group of educators and local leaders to devise a comprehensive program aimed at raising awareness about the contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen. They decided to launch an annual event, the Tuskegee Legacy Day, where students could present projects and performances that highlighted the impact of the airmen on civil rights and military history. During the planning meetings, Jack often shared anecdotes from the bomber crewmen who had witnessed the Tuskegee pilots in action. The crewmen's stories of bravery and camaraderie resonated with the students, igniting a deep interest in the historical context of their struggles. These men didn't just fight for their own freedom. They fought for all of us, Jack would say, emphasizing the collective responsibility to honor that legacy. As the inaugural Tuskegee Legacy Day approached, the energy in the school was palpable. Students worked tirelessly, creating exhibitions that featured photographs, documentaries, and live reenactments of significant missions carried out by the 302nd Fighter Group. Maya, along with her peers, crafted a compelling performance that illustrated the journey of the Tuskegee Airmen, from their rigorous training at the Tuskegee Institute to their pivotal role in World War II. The day of the event arrived, and the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents, community members, and local veterans gathered, eager to witness the students' tribute to the airmen. As the lights dimmed, Maya took the stage, her heart pounding with anticipation. With each word, she painted the struggles and triumphs of the Tuskegee pilots. The audience was captivated as she conveyed the weight of their sacrifices and the joy of their achievements. The performance culminated in a reenactment of a mission, complete with sound effects and a backdrop that depicted the skies over Europe. The students, dressed in vintage flight jackets, portrayed the pilots' unwavering determination, and the crowd could feel the tension of aerial combat in the air. After the performance, a local historian who had dedicated years to studying the Tuskegee Airmen took the stage to share his insights. He spoke of the significance of their contributions, not just in terms of military success, but also how they paved the way for future generations of black aviators and the broader civil rights movement. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen is a testament to courage against adversity, he said, his voice steady and resonant. They shattered the stereotypes that sought to confine them, and in doing so, they opened doors for all of us. As the event concluded, the atmosphere was charged with inspiration. Attendees mingled, discussing their thoughts and feelings about the presentation. Jack felt a sense of fulfillment as he watched students engage with veterans, asking questions and learning firsthand from those who had experienced the war. It was a moment of connection that bridged generations, illustrating that the fight for equality was far from over. In the weeks that followed, the impact of the Tuskegee Legacy Day rippled through the community. Schools began incorporating lessons on the airmen into their curricula, and local organizations started offering scholarships for aspiring pilots. Jack realized that the students had not only honored the past, but had also ignited a movement toward a more inclusive future. Maya, reflecting on the success of the event, spoke passionately about the importance of storytelling. "We have a responsibility to share these stories," she said. "The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen is a beacon of hope. It shows us that even when the odds are stacked against us, we can rise above and make a difference." As the community continued to rally around the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the stories of those brave pilots would continue to inspire and empower future generations, ensuring that their sacrifices were never forgotten. The fight for justice and equality was a journey, but together they were making strides toward a better tomorrow. As the weeks turned into months, the impact of the Tuskegee Legacy Day continued to resonate within the community. Jack found himself drawn deeper into the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, seeking out archives, interviews, and any materials that would shed light on their extraordinary journey. One particular account caught his attention, a memoir from a bomber crewman who had flown alongside the Tuskegee pilots during the war. Intrigued, Jack reached out to the crewman, a man named Harold, who was now in his 80s. They arranged to meet at a small cafe that overlooked the river, a serene place where they could reminisce about the past. As Jack sat across from Harold, he felt a sense of anticipation. He knew the importance of hearing firsthand what those fateful missions had been like. Harold's eyes sparkled with memories as he spoke. I was part of a B-17 crew, and we flew numerous missions over Europe. I'll never forget the first time we were escorted by the Tuskegee pilots. We were nervous. We had heard the rumors about how they were treated, and we wondered if they would be as skilled as the reports claimed. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee, and Jack leaned in, eager to hear more. But when the red tails appeared alongside us, everything changed. They flew with a confidence that was contagious. We felt a surge of pride knowing we were in capable hands. Those pilots didn't just protect us, they inspired us. As Harold continued, he painted a vivid picture of the aerial battles they faced together. There was one mission in particular, over Berlin. We were outnumbered and in trouble. The enemy fighters came at us like a swarm of bees. Just when I thought it was the end, the Tuskegee pilots swooped in. They danced through the sky, engaging the enemy with a grace I had never seen. It was like watching a well-rehearsed ballet, and we felt invincible with them by our side. Jack was captivated, his heart racing as Harold recounted how the pilots' bravery transformed the atmosphere among the crew members. We cheered them on, not just as fellow soldiers, but as brothers in arms. They proved to us that they were not just there to fight for themselves. They were fighting for all of us, for equality, for respect. After their conversation, Jack felt compelled to share Harold's story with the community. He organized a special event, inviting veterans and students alike to hear first-hand accounts of the Tuskegee pilots from those who had witnessed their valor. The evening was filled with a sense of camaraderie as stories were shared. Laughter erupted, and emotions ran high. As the event unfolded, Maya took the stage to present Harold's story. Her voice was strong, yet filled with warmth. Tonight, we honor not just the pilots of Tuskegee, but all those who stood with them. Their fight was our fight, and together, they forged a path toward justice and equality. Let us remember that the courage displayed in the skies over Europe was not just about winning wars. It was about breaking barriers and challenging the status quo. The audience erupted in applause, and Jack looked around the room, feeling the energy shift. There was a palpable sense of unity. Families who had been divided by prejudice and misunderstanding began to engage in conversations, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. As the night came to a close, Harold stood up, his voice trembling with emotion. I thought I'd lost my chance to tell my story, but here I am. I want each of you to remember, it's not just about the past. It's about how we carry this legacy into the future. These pilots taught us all that courage knows no color. Jack felt a wave of inspiration wash over him. He understood now that the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was not a tale confined to history books. It was a living narrative, one that could propel the community toward a brighter, more inclusive future. As people began to leave, he saw hope reflected in their faces, a shared commitment to ensure that the struggles and triumphs of the Tuskegee pilots would never to obscurity. Their journey was far from over. It had merely begun anew. As the audience began to disperse, Jack lingered, drawn to Harold's words. He approached the veteran, a mix of admiration and curiosity swirling within him. Harold, he said softly, your story is powerful, but what was it really like up there in the air? What did you see that made such an impact? Harold studied him for a moment, his eyes reflecting the weight of memories long buried. Jack, it was a different world, he began, his voice steady but layered with emotion. When we took off in our bombers, it wasn't just about the mission. It was about trust in each other and trust in those who flew alongside us, the Tuskegee pilots. He paused, the sounds of the bustling crowd fading into the background. I remember our first joint mission with the 302nd. We were flying over enemy territory, and I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew the odds were stacked against us. We had heard the stories, the skepticism that surrounded the Tuskegee Airmen, but what I witnessed that day shifted everything. Harold's gaze drifted as he recalled the flight. Their formation was flawless. I could see the red tails from a distance, cutting through the clouds, and I felt a surge of hope. These men, who had fought against the very prejudices that sought to ground them, were now soaring above it all. They weren't just pilots, they were warriors. The audience began to gather around him, drawn by the gravity of his story. When we encountered enemy fighters, it was the Tuskegee pilots, who engaged them head-on. They didn't hold back. I watched as they maneuvered their P-51s with precision, protecting us like hawks. It was remarkable. They were fighting not just for their lives, but for their dignity. There was a murmur of agreement from the crowd, and Jack's heart swelled with pride. Harold continued, "After that mission, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were part of something greater. The Red Tails changed the narrative. They turned skepticism into respect. I remember one of our crew members saying, 'Those pilots are the real deal.' It was a turning point for us all." As he finished, Jack felt a fire ignite within him. "Harold, how did you cope with the pressures of that time? Did the fear ever feel overwhelming?" Harold chuckled softly, the laughter tinged with an understanding that only comes from experience. Fear was ever present, but so was determination. Each time we took to the skies, we were reminded that our fight was not just against the enemy, but against the very prejudices that had kept us grounded. We knew the Tuskegee pilots were pushing boundaries for all of us, and that gave us strength. With renewed energy, Jack spoke up. "What should we do to honor this legacy? How can we ensure that future generations understand the significance of what you and the Tuskegee pilots did?" Harold's eyes lit up. "Share these stories. Engage with your communities. Talk about the struggles and the triumphs. The more we understand, the more we can unite. Remember, it's not just about the past. It's about the future we build together. Legacy lives through action." As the crowd began to disperse, Jack felt a deep resolve settle within him. Inspired by Harold's words, he knew he was ready to carry this message forward. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was alive, a beacon of hope and resilience that transcended time. With a final nod to Harold, Jack stepped outside, the night air cool against his skin, and he looked up at the stars. Each one seemed to whisper the stories of those who had fought for freedom, equality, and justice. He vowed to ensure that the courage of the Tuskegee pilots would never be forgotten, their legacy woven into the fabric of a brighter tomorrow. As Jack stood under the vast expanse of the night sky, the weight of Harold's words resonated deeply within him. He felt an urgency to honor the Tuskegee pilots, not just in memory, but through action. With a newfound purpose, he made his way home, his mind racing with ideas. The stories of those brave men needed to be shared, not just among veterans, but with the youth, the future leaders who could carry their legacy forward. The next morning, Jack awoke early, a fire ignited within him. He reached for his laptop and began to draft a proposal for a community event that would celebrate the contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen. He envisioned an afternoon filled with storytelling, guest speakers, and educational workshops aimed at fostering understanding and respect among different races. He wanted to create a space where young people could learn about the sacrifices made by the pilots and how their courage in the face of adversity could inspire change today. As he pored over the details, Jack reached out to local schools, veterans organizations, and history clubs. He shared his vision, and to his delight, people responded with enthusiasm. Within weeks, he had secured a venue, gathered a team of volunteers, and booked several veterans, including Harold, to share their experiences. The event was shaping up to be more than he had ever imagined. On the day of the event, the community center buzzed with excitement. Banners adorned the walls, featuring images of the Tuskegee pilots and their iconic red-tailed planes. Jack felt a swell of pride as he looked around at the diverse crowd, families, students, veterans, and even local officials. This was what unity looked like, and he felt honored to be part of it. Harold was the keynote speaker, and as he took the stage, a hush fell over the audience. With a steady voice, he began recounting the challenges of training in Tuskegee, the discrimination they faced, and the joy of flying their first combat missions. His stories were vivid, painting pictures of courage and resilience that captivated everyone in the room. As he spoke about the first bombing missions, Harold shared a particularly harrowing experience. "We were sent to escort bombers over enemy territory," he recalled. his eyes glinting with the memory. Our P-40s were outdated, but we knew our purpose. We had to protect those bombers. We flew through flak and enemy fire, and though we lost friends, we never lost sight of our mission. Each time we returned safely, it was a victory against the odds. Jack watched as the audience leaned in, captivated by the raw emotion of Harold's words. He could see young faces reflecting determination, their imaginations ignited by the legacy of the Tuskegee pilots. It was a moment of connection, bridging generations through shared history and values. After Harold finished, a panel discussion followed, and young attendees began to ask questions. They wanted to know how the pilots felt about the challenges they faced, how they maintained hope in a world that often made them feel unwelcome. The dialogue was powerful, sparking conversations about race, equity, and the importance of standing up against injustice. As the event wound down, Jack felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had begun to see change take root within his community. Conversations that had once been avoided were now taking place openly. Stories that had long been forgotten were being shared and celebrated. A young girl approached Jack, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Can we do this again? I want to learn more," she said, clutching a flyer with information about the Tuskegee Airmen. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of hope swell within him. "Absolutely," he replied. "This is just the beginning. Together, we will keep their legacy alive." As he looked around at the engaged faces, Jack realized that the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was not merely a story of the past. It was a call to action for the future. They had shown that courage could conquer hate, and that unity could defy division. Inspired, he vowed to continue amplifying their stories, ensuring that the lessons learned would echo through generations, igniting the same spirit of resilience and determination that the Tuskegee pilots had embodied in the skies. As days turned into weeks, Jack's initiative began to draw more attention. The next event was announced, and this time, the community hall was filled to capacity. Among the crowd was a veteran named Tom, a former bomber crewman who had flown during the same period as the Tuskegee Airmen. His presence was electric, and Jack could sense a palpable curiosity among the attendees. They were eager to hear Tom's perspective on the legendary pilots they had come to admire. When Tom took the stage, he paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the audience. "I want to share something I witnessed long ago, something that changed my understanding of courage," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The room fell silent, each person leaning in as Tom recounted his experiences. "The year was 1944, and I was part of a bombing squadron that had seen its share of losses," he said. "We were assigned to a mission over Germany, and we were to be escorted by the 332nd. To be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect. I had heard the stories, but I had also heard the doubts." Tom's voice grew stronger as he described the day of the mission. "When we took off, I remember seeing those red tails flying in formation beside us, looking sharp and determined. The pilots of Tuskegee were not just there to escort us, they were there to protect us. And protect us they did. We encountered heavy flak, and I saw planes go down, but those red tails fought valiantly." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "What struck me most was their unwavering focus. They didn't just fly. They maneuvered with an artistry I had never seen before. They prioritized our safety, diving in front of us to draw enemy fire. I watched as they shielded our bombers like guardian angels." A murmur rippled through the audience as Tom continued. "I'll never forget one of their pilots, a young man named Charles. He was in the thick of it, engaging enemy fighters, and yet somehow he managed to keep his cool. I remember thinking, how can he be so brave? It was then I realized that their courage was born not just from the mission, but from a fight against prejudice. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for respect, for recognition in a world that sought to deny them." Jack could see the audience's expressions shift, understanding the deeper implications of Tom's story. It was not just a tale of wartime heroics. It was a lesson on dignity and resilience. After that day, I returned home with a new perspective. The Tuskegee Airmen taught me that bravery transcends color and that true valor is found in the fight against injustice. As Tom finished, there was a moment of silence, followed by a thunderous round of applause. Jack felt tears pricking at his eyes, overwhelmed by the impact of the shared history. It was clear that Tom's testimony had ignited something within the audience, an understanding that the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was not just about flying, it was about standing tall in the face of adversity. In the following weeks, Jack and Tom worked together, planning a series of workshops and discussions aimed at educating younger generations about the contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen and the broader context of civil rights. They invited local schools and community groups, emphasizing the importance of learning from the past to shape a better future. The impact of their efforts was palpable. Children began to express interest in aviation, inspired not only by the pilots' skills, but by their stories of perseverance against the odds. Parents engaged in conversations about race and equity, often citing Tom's gripping account as a catalyst for change. As Jack stood at the front of the hall during one of the discussions, he looked out at the sea of eager faces, young and old alike, and felt a surge of hope. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was more than a memory. It was a living testament to the power of courage, unity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, light could emerge through shared stories and collective action. With each event, Jack witnessed a transformation, not just in the community's awareness, but in their commitment to honor the past by actively participating in the fight for a more equitable future. The Red-Tailed Angels had inspired not just a generation of pilots, but a movement that refused to be forgotten. And as Jack realized, this was just the beginning of a long journey toward understanding, respect, and change. As the weeks turned into months, Jack and Tom's initiative gained momentum. They organized a community exhibition showcasing artifacts from the Tuskegee Airmen era. Photos, uniforms, and personal letters adorned the walls of the local community center, each item telling its own story of bravery and resilience. The exhibition attracted visitors from neighboring towns, igniting conversations about the impact of the airmen both in the skies and on the ground. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the center, a local historian named Ms. Harris approached Jack and Tom. With a keen eye for detail, she had been studying the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen for years. "You know," she said, "these pilots didn't just change the course of the war, they changed the course of history. Their courage helped dismantle the barriers of segregation in the military. We should highlight that in our discussions." Inspired by her words, Jack suggested forming a panel discussion with veterans and historians to delve deeper into the social implications of the airmen's contributions. They reached out to local veterans organizations, and soon a diverse group of speakers was assembled. On the day of the event, the hall was filled to capacity, the air buzzing with anticipation. As the panelists shared their stories, a palpable sense of connection emerged. One veteran, a former bomber crewman named Bill, recounted a harrowing mission over Europe. "I remember the day we were escorted by the Red-Tailed Angels," he said, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Those pilots didn't just protect us, they lifted our spirits. We knew they were fighting not only for their country but for their right to be there, side by side with us." The audience listened intently as Bill described how the Tuskegee pilots flew with unmatched skill and determination, often facing overwhelming odds while maintaining their duty to protect the bombers. "They were our guardians in the sky," he continued, "and they earned every bit of respect we could give them." As the discussion unfolded, a young girl in the front row raised her hand. "Did you ever feel scared?" she asked. Bill smiled, nodding. "Every time we took off, there was fear. But what I saw in those pilots wasn't just fear, it was courage. They faced their fears and flew bravely, and that inspired us all." The evening concluded with an emotional standing ovation as the community recognized the profound impact of the Tuskegee Airmen, not just on the battlefield, but in the fight for equality. Jack felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. This was more than just an event. It was a step toward healing and understanding. Inspired by the success of the panel, Jack and Tom planned a series of youth mentorship programs, pairing local aviators with aspiring pilots. They aimed to create pathways for young people of color to explore aviation as a career, echoing the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. With each mentorship session, stories were exchanged, dreams were ignited, and a new generation began to envision themselves soaring through the skies. The community's transformation was undeniable. Schools began incorporating lessons on the Tuskegee Airmen into their curricula, ensuring that the legacy of these brave pilots would never to obscurity. Families spoke of the airmen at dinner tables, invoking discussions on courage, equality, and the importance of perseverance. As Jack reflected on their journey, he realized that the true essence of the Tuskegee Airmen lay not just in their past victories, but in the hope they inspired for the future. Their story had become a catalyst for change, a reminder that the fight for justice and equality was ongoing. And as Tom often said, we honor their legacy by continuing the fight, ensuring that their sacrifices weren't in vain. Together, they forged ahead, determined to keep the spirit of the Red Tail Angels alive, not only in the hearts of their community, but in the hearts of all those who dared to dream. As the youth mentorship programs gained momentum, Jack and Tom found themselves reflecting on their own aspirations and the stories that had shaped their lives. One evening, while discussing their next steps over coffee, Jack suggested they invite a Tuskegee Airman to speak at the local community center. "There's nothing more powerful than hearing a story from the source," said, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. Tom nodded in agreement. "Let's reach out to the local veterans organization. I'm sure they can help us connect with someone who can bring the history to life for these kids." Their efforts bore fruit when they arranged for Colonel Charles McGee, a distinguished Tuskegee Airman, to speak at the event. The night of the panel arrived, and the community center buzzed with excitement. Families filled the seats, eager to hear from the man who had flown over Europe in the iconic P-51 Mustang. As Colonel McGee took the stage, the room fell silent, captivated by the presence of a living legend. With a warm smile, McGee began recounting his experiences during the war, detailing not only the thrilling aerial battles, but also the deep-seated challenges of being a black pilot in a segregated military. He spoke of the camaraderie among the airmen, their relentless determination to prove themselves, and the unwavering support they found in one another. As he shared stories of bravery, Jack noticed the faces of the young audience lighting up with inspiration. "Each time we took to the skies," McGee said, his voice resonating with conviction, "we carried not just our dreams, but the hopes of our community. We were more than just pilots. We were symbols of resilience and change." After the talk, the room erupted in applause, and many stayed back to ask questions, their curiosity piqued by the stories of heroism and sacrifice. Jack watched as young faces lit up with newfound ambition. It was in that moment he realized the impact of sharing history. It was transforming perspectives and igniting dreams. Following Colonel McGee's visit, Jack and Tom organized a field trip to a nearby aviation museum. They arranged for the kids to experience flight simulations and learn about aircraft design. As they entered the museum, the walls adorned with images of the Tuskegee Airmen, Jack felt a sense of pride swell within him. Each display was a testament to the struggles and triumphs of the pilots, and the kids were visibly moved. Among the students, a young girl named Maya, with a fierce determination in her eyes, approached Jack. "I want to be a pilot just like them," she declared, her voice steady. "I want to fly higher than anyone thinks I can." Jack's heart swelled. He recognized that the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was not just about their past, but also about empowering a new generation to reach for the skies. As the months passed, the mentorship program flourished, and more local aviators joined in, sharing their expertise and passion. They organized workshops on aviation mechanics, navigation, and even hosted flight days, where kids could experience the thrill of flying. The community embraced this initiative, and the spirit of the Red Tail Angels became a beacon of hope. Yet, amidst the victories, Jack and Tom remained conscious of the ongoing challenges in achieving true equality. They initiated discussions on social justice and equity, encouraging the young pilots to not only pursue their dreams, but also to become advocates for change in their communities. One day, while working on a project about the civil rights movement, Maya approached Jack with a question that struck him deeply. "Why? Do you think it's still hard for people like me to be seen as equals?" she asked, her brow furrowed in thought. Jack paused, realizing the weight of her inquiry. "It's a journey," he replied thoughtfully. But every step we take, every story we share, brings us closer to a world where everyone is recognized for their worth. As the program continued to grow, Jack and Tom knew they were fostering not just future aviators, but also informed citizens ready to continue the fight for equality. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was not just a memory. It was a living, breathing movement propelling them all toward a brighter and more inclusive future. As the mentorship program continued to flourish, Jack and Tom recognized that the spirit of the Red Tail Angels was not just about flying, it was about building resilience and community. They organized a special event to honor the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, inviting veterans to share their experiences with the young aviators. The anticipation in the air was palpable as the day approached, and both mentors understood the significance of this gathering. On the day of the event, the local airfield buzzed with excitement. Young faces lit up as they spotted the distinguished guests arriving. Some in uniforms adorned with medals, others in casual attire, but with stories etched in their eyes. Jack introduced the veterans, highlighting their bravery and the historical context that defined their struggles. The veterans spoke not just of their aerial victories, but of the battles they faced on the ground, discrimination, skepticism, and the relentless fight for respect. One veteran, in particular, captivated the audience. Captain Charles Anderson, a former Tuskegee pilot, shared a gripping account of a mission over Europe. "We were often underestimated," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But every time we took to the skies, we weren't just flying for ourselves. We were flying for our brothers and sisters back home." His words resonated deeply with Maya, who had asked Jack about equality just weeks earlier. After the speeches, the young pilots were eager to ask questions. Maya, emboldened by Captain Anderson's story, raised her hand. "How did you keep fighting when people didn't believe in you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the question. Captain Anderson smiled, his eyes reflecting a lifetime of resilience. "We fought not just for recognition, but for the future, your future. There were days when it felt like we were flying against the wind, but we knew that every combat mission was a chance to change hearts and minds." As the day progressed, the veterans engaged with the kids, sharing techniques on flying and the principles of aviation. Tom observed Maya as she animatedly conversed with Captain Anderson, visibly inspired. He knew that these interactions were sowing seeds of hope, determination, and empowerment in the next generation. Around a bonfire that night, Jack gathered everyone for a reflection session. "What we learned today goes beyond aviation," he said, looking around at the eager faces. "It's about courage and the belief that change is possible. As future aviators, you have the power to challenge perceptions and break barriers." The evening turned into a moment of bonding, with stories of dreams, aspirations, and the shared commitment to combat inequality. The young pilots began to articulate their visions, some wanting to advocate for diversity in aviation, others aiming to inspire their peers through education. As weeks turned into months, the mentorship program began to attract attention beyond their community. Local news outlets featured stories about their efforts, and soon, funding started to pour in from unexpected sources. With this newfound support, Jack and Tom decided to expand their initiative, introducing scholarships for aspiring pilots and partnerships with aviation schools. Maya, now a leader among her peers, proposed an idea to create a documentary chronicling the mentorship program and its impact. "We need to show the world what we're doing," she urged during a planning meeting. Jack and Tom exchanged proud glances, knowing that the spirit of the Tuskegee Airmen was alive and well in the hearts of these young aviators. As the project progressed, they interviewed veterans, captured the stories of the kids, and highlighted the ongoing fight for equality in aviation. The documentary became a symbol of resilience and hope, not just for the flying community, but for anyone who faced adversity. In the end, Jack and Tom stood on the precipice of something much larger than they had envisioned. The legacy of the Tuskegee pilots was no longer just a tale of the past. It was an active movement, inspiring a new generation to reach for the skies and change the world one flight at a time. As the months passed, the documentary project began to take shape, and the young pilots felt a surge of purpose. They organized community screenings, inviting veterans to share their stories and connecting with local schools to educate the next generation about the Tuskegee Airmen's legacy. The air was electric with inspiration, and the project became a rallying point for discussions about race, equality, and the power of perseverance. One day, Jack received a call from a prominent aviation magazine interested in featuring their mentorship program. The editor, intrigued by the enthusiasm emanating from the youth, wanted to publish an article that would highlight their efforts and shed light on the ongoing challenges in the industry. This was a pivotal moment. The group realized that they had the opportunity to reach an even wider audience. In a brainstorming session, Maya suggested they invite local politicians to a special event showcasing their documentary. If we can get them to see the impact we're making, they might support us in advocating for policy changes in aviation education, she proposed, her eyes shining with determination. The team agreed, setting a date for a community gala where they would screen the film and celebrate their achievements. As the gala approached, the pressure mounted. Jack and Tom worked tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. They reached out to local businesses for sponsorships, organized a panel of veterans to discuss their experiences, and prepared a heartfelt presentation that would connect the past with the present. The night of the event arrived, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The venue was packed. Families, veterans, and local leaders filled the space, all eager to witness the culmination of months of hard work. As the lights dimmed and the documentary began to play, a hush fell over the crowd. The film depicted the struggles and triumphs of the Tuskegee Airmen, interspersed with clips of the young pilots discussing their dreams and aspirations. It resonated deeply, sparking conversations and evoking a sense of pride. After the screening, the panel discussion commenced. Veterans spoke candidly about their experiences, sharing the fear and uncertainty they faced, as well as the incredible bond forged among them in the face of adversity. Their stories served as a powerful reminder of why the young aviators were fighting for change. As the event concluded, a local congresswoman took the stage, her voice steady and passionate. "What you all are doing here today is not just honoring history. You are shaping the future," she declared. "I am committed to ensuring that we support initiatives like yours that promote diversity and inclusion in aviation." The applause that followed was thunderous, filling the room with an energy that felt transformative. Jack, Tom, and Maya exchanged glances, realizing how far they had come and the impact they were beginning to make. In the weeks that followed, the momentum continued to build. News articles were published, social media buzzed with excitement, and the mentorship program attracted attention from national organizations looking to collaborate. The pilots began to receive invitations to speak at conferences and schools, sharing their journey and inspiring even more young people to pursue aviation. Among the many stories shared, one stood out. A young girl named Zoe, who had long dreamed of flying, but had faced discouragement from peers and adults alike. After attending one of their workshops, she approached the team with tears in her eyes, saying, "You made me believe I can be a pilot." Her words resonated deeply with Maya, who had once felt the same doubts. Fueled by this newfound inspiration, the group decided to launch an annual aviation camp for underrepresented youth, offering hands-on flight training and mentorship. They reached out to aviation schools and local flight clubs, garnering support for their initiative. The camp would not only provide practical skills, but also instill confidence and a sense of belonging among young aviators. As they prepared for the inaugural camp, Jack often reflected on the lessons learned from the Tuskegee Airmen. The resilience, unity, and unwavering spirit of those pilots served as both a guide and a reminder of the importance of their mission. The legacy continued, intertwining the past with the present and propelling them toward a brighter future in the skies. With the camp set to launch, excitement filled the air. They were not just honoring history, they were actively writing a new chapter, one that would inspire generations to come. The young pilots stood poised to take flight, ready to carry the torch of the Tuskegee Airmen into a future defined by hope, equality, and limitless possibilities.